Well, Governor Gavin Newsom revisited a decades-long ethical debate this week by announcing a moratorium on the death penalty. On Wednesday, the governor signed an executive order vowing that no prisoner will be executed while he is in office. More than 730 inmates are currently housed on death row in California, more than in any other jurisdiction in the Western Hemisphere. Governor Newsom said he signed the order with a deep appreciation for the victims of crime and his own moral beliefs.
The question really is, do we have the right to kill? Do we have the right to kill? And that's a deep and existential question. I don't believe we do.
Well, the governor's moratorium only suspends capital punishment and does not fully abolish it. The last execution in California was in 2006. There have been efforts to repeal the death penalty, most recently in 2016. Now, there are more than two sides to this issue, of course. Joining us now to talk about the nuances of the death penalty debate is Ahnen. He's a political professor at St. Mary's College, where he teaches a course on the politics of incarceration. He's also the former president of the California Prison Focus, a grassroots prisoner rights organization. And you also have a very personal story to share with us today. Before we get to that, let's just talk about this issue in general. It's a very difficult one. People have very deep-seated beliefs on kind of where this should go. And when I was listening to Governor Newsom earlier this week, I thought, and he said, you're not going to probably change minds here. You are probably either going to feel on one side a lot of support from people who've wanted this to happen, and then just a lot of anger and frustration from the other.
Yeah, the death penalty is, in fact, a very complicated issue. There are moral dimensions to it, legal dimensions to it, political dimensions to it. But what I really see driving Governor Newsom is, in fact, the ethical dimension. He finds himself as governor of California, and I think he just feels that he's not going to be able to sign off on a death warrant. And so looking at the system and how it's not working, looking at the racial bias, looking at how much it costs, basically he's called a moratorium. It doesn't change the death penalty, it doesn't let anybody out of prison, it doesn't change anybody's sentence, but it just stops them.
Where does this stand when you're looking at it as a professor of this issue, as it's gone decade after decade? How does this change anything? Does it delay something, but we end up right back where we started, unless we have changes in law, unless some of these ballot initiatives go forward, unless the voters change it? Is this just, I don't want to say a hiccup, or how significant is this in terms of where there's going to be real change on policy in this situation?
Well, I think that the moral and political landscape is changing. We see that the number of countries with the death penalty is dwindling. We see that in the United States, the number of states that is abolishing the death penalty is increasing. There's now 20 states who have abolished it. There's 3 other states that have similar moratoria. So we have Pennsylvania, Oregon, and Colorado, so it's not unprecedented. We did have propositions in 2012 and 2016, and the governor is talking about another one. I think the difference with this governor is that he's going to spend some political capital on this. He really thinks this is the wrong thing to do, and I think he's going to be willing to get out there and really push for an end to the death penalty once and for all.
And let's be clear for our viewers, you agree with that stance?
I do. I have a deep respect for those family members of victims who are for the death penalty, but there are other of us who are also family members, and I can tell you that I also lost a sister to homicide 46 years ago this month. It's a tragedy that I'm not going to get over. You learn how to live with the pain. But for many of us, it leads us to a different conclusion, and that is more violence is not going to end violence, and that if we take the resources, the $5 billion, and pour that into preventing crime and preventing the next victim and victims' family members having to go through what I went through, I think that's really a moral issue as well.
It was your sister in 1973 in Wisconsin where there was no death penalty, also a kidnapping situation, and then a horrible murder. Even as a child then, you were 8 years old, she was 7 years old. From what I've read, you had this position, it sounds like, even as a child, that you didn't respond to that tragedy and that horrific situation by saying, I want this person who did this to die.
And the amazing thing is, I can remember when I was on the playground, there was a kid who offered, he said, you know, Ron, if I could help, what I could do for you, I would shoot that guy right between the eyes. And the only thing I could think to myself is, violence just ripped my family apart. How can you be advocating for more violence? So there's a certain moral logic that works in the opposite direction that I think a lot of people don't see. I know the media often portrays family victims members as always being pro-death, but they're not.
I want to play this bite, though, just on the other side of from Mark Klass, whose daughter Polly was kidnapped and brutally killed as well. This is what he had to say when he was talking about Gavin Newsom's decision.
A little bit of me died. It really did. It was like a blow to the solar plexus. I hope he's proud. I hope he's proud that he's advocating for pure evil incarnate in our society.
He's saying that the man charged with killing his daughter is on death row, who will, you know, be a part of this moratorium. I guess the last question is there any way to resolve, I mean, the passion that you feel faced with your own personal tragedy, the passion that Mark Klass feels, you know, that I listened to both of you, and I don't know, you know, in terms of just feeling like, how do you move forward? How do you move forward with this issue? How do you resolve, or can any of that be resolved?
Well, we're going to continue to talk to each other. We're going to continue to listen to each other. We're going to have to figure this out together as a state. It's a possibility that the governor might try to change the Constitution. We might try for another proposition, or we might end up just commuting sentences. But we're going to continue to struggle with it, that's for sure.
And before I let you go, you teach this class. When you talk to your students, do you find that a majority of them are for the death penalty or against it?
You know, I don't teach my students in terms of telling them what to think, so they come to all sorts of different conclusions. But I can tell you that we do take them to San Quentin, and they do grapple with these issues. And I find students that are on both sides as well.
Yeah, they are heavy issues that we should be grappling with and giving a lot of deep thought to. Ron Ahnen, thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate your insight.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Rosemary, let's head it over to you, because you have some good weather to talk about heading our way on this last weekend of winter.
I know.